Hello. Well, recently you may have seen me do a demonstration of a Sony car stereo head end which has CD and minidisc autochangers, and that unit is coming out of my Toyota Celica today and over the next few days. So we'll do a video of removing that and installing a new modern Kenwood system. Let's get stuck in. Right, first let's get any media out of these machines. So I need to eject the minidisc. Can I press eject when it's playing? No. How does that work then? Let's take the other discs out. Right, tell it I want to change disc. It won't let me. How do I get the last disc out? Don't know how to do that. Ah, there we are. There's a button there. Oh, I'm glad I found that. There's a button at the bottom. Now I can press eject. There you go. This button here. Right, that's got all the discs out. Let's get all the media out of this. Duracell. Yeah, lovely. This is where it struggles. The eject and load for that CD is a bit sticky. It did work in the end, but that rubber roller needs a bit of work. Right, it's now playing CD from the boot, so we need to eject that as well. Okay, press the eject button on that, and it shut the stereo down. So we're good now. We can go ahead and remove the unit. There's various extra wiring here to do with dash cams and things. There's an outer trim panel here, which I want to replace because it's got some damage on it from previous installations decades ago. Okay. Now, I believe the only thing I need to do to take this away is disconnect the clock. And there's something else here. Oh, that's a hazard warning light, and that's the clock. Now I have an assortment of bolts which are covered in gunge to make them hard to undo. So I will remove those, and some of these bolts are tamper-proof and high security and oddball things. Power it down. Even with the right tools, that was hard. Exactly how this works, I don't know. Got these brackets here that screw onto the car. These must come with the car. And hopefully they fit the new stereo. Right, here's the new stereo. This is the wiring for the old one, all of which needs completely starting again. And I'm going to wire in I'm going to wire in this ISO adapter. But a lot of work, but I'm going to do just make sure it mechanically all fits before I start doing the electrical side of it. So we need to make sure that this will mount on the side. It looks promising, but let's have a look if the screw holes line up. Okay, let's see if this physically fits okay before we worry too much about wiring. That's all looking very good, isn't it? Pop in just one bolt for now, one screw rather, just to hold it in place, and then make sure that the front fascia fits okay. Yes, I would say maybe it's 0.5 millimeter high on the right hand side, so maybe I can drop that down a little bit later, but we're basically there. That'll look really nice when it's finished. A long way to go yet though. Right, all of this chock block rubbish wants to be removed. This cable was the control cable for the autochangers. So there's a control box somewhere. Deep down in the bowels here we have autochanger control box. Let's disconnect it. So this allowed you to connect up to 3 autochangers. Source selector XA-C30. I only had 2 autochangers connected, although I had a third one I could have connected up to it, but that's as many as I needed. Right, I can go with the Sony stereo. Do need to remember to get the wiring out for its control, power control, because we don't want to lose that. That'll be a special cable for it. These are the autochanger control cables. It was very long on the grounds that you might have had the mini disc autochanger not in the glove box but in the boot. Some wiring here for a relay for the remote control boot release. If I press and hold a button, no, you know what this is? This is power control. What I've done here, cool, it's going back a long time, I put in a relay. Yes, I know what this is for. The wiring to the radio for the accessory position wasn't very thick, so I modified it, and I've got the wiring coming from the car going to a relay and then switching the power to this great big wire here which goes straight to the battery via fuse. So it's a way of getting better quality switched ignition power here. So this relay should click on as I put the ignition, the accessory position on. There it is. So that's a better quality 12 volt feed than the car would have provided. That's why I've done this. Did that 20 odd years ago and I've forgotten all about it. Okay, that's all fine. This is the supply connector that comes with the adapter. So I won't be using these because I've patched them out with much thicker cables. But I will be needing a ground. And this ground is a little bit weedy, so I'm going to replace that with a nice big thick wire and run it straight to a good grounding point there. Right, so I've slightly modified this. I'm not going to be using those connectors because I've bypassed them. These will be used for whatever they are. This is the ground, and I've fitted a decent quality bit of cable to that. Because all the current, of course, that goes into the supply is going to come out of the ground. It needs to be a decent quality cable. So if we have supply and ground on here, we may be in a position where we can actually power up the new stereo and at least just see the display light up. Okay. Obviously we won't get any sound, but we should get some display. a good start. Lots more to do, but that's a very good start. You may get one of these DAB aerials with your Kenwood system, and what this thing lacks is any instructions. Well, I haven't found any, but after some trial and error, I have worked out what to do. Alcohol preparation pad to get the windscreen really clean, where we're going to be applying this. I've done that already with some of my own alcohol. This is the part which attaches to the window, and it will attach that way round. Then sticking to this will be this component here, which is an active aerial, so there's at least an amplifier in there, and you do need to set the supply on in the menus on the DAB radio. That's the connector that goes into the stereo, and there's something really important I need to show you here. There's this part here, so this sticky part goes on such that there are some alignment marks here. This gold coloured contact needs to meet with, when you've peeled this off, the pad that's in there. So that's an electrical contact. But this is really important too, because that has to go against the car body, the trim, so underneath the trim. So I'll pull this trim out of the way. You can see I've already had a bit of a go at it. So the A-pillar trim, I think that's called. So there's the metal of the body, and this needs to go on there. And there is some debate about whether you need to scratch the metal to allow it to make an actual electrical contact with the material under this sticky cover. And I think you probably don't, because at the frequencies we're talking about, this surface plus the surface of the metal of the car creates a capacitor of sufficiently high value that it's effectively a short circuit to AC. But we could be-belt some braces and glass paper a little bit of the metal just to give it an actual electrical contact. Now, what we need to do is decide where this is going, and it's going to be about there. So this is going to go there. So we need to scratch a little bit of the metal at that point. So these are marked 1 and 2. In order you have to take them off. So number 1 will allow me to fit it to the windscreen, and then number 2, take this backing off so that I can then fit the electronics to this. So we want this to be roughly in line with the plain metal. I don't see there's any reason that I can't hide this, at least in part, behind a black strip that's painted onto this car. You get one shot at this. And these aerials are fairly expensive, so you want to get it right. Now we can install this. Here, and there are alignment marks. Points here line up with those alignment marks. This red backing doesn't come off terribly easily. Really hard to get that started. I'll use a blade, see if I can help peel it back. Okay, just about that. Now take off the part for this earthing piece. So we need to line this up with those arrows. And then this strip needs to be on the bare metal. I could cover that with a bit of paint. And then we need to run the wire down here over to the radio. Here's an idea. Let's leave a little bit of slack here, so just in case the wire ever gets tugged, at least there's a bit of slack rather than it rip off the windscreen. Okay, maybe learn from my mistake. That was a little bit too far to the edge, so it's actually pushing very slightly on the trim. So if I could have my time again, I would have put it a few millimeters further away, but it'll just have to be. Well, the unit is pretty much installed now. I'm not going to go into too much detail about how I wired everything up, because it's bound to be somewhat specific to your particular car. But there is one thing I wanted to talk about, and that's the fact that the USB input socket here is mounted as its own cable. It's about 1 meter long rather than on the front panel, and I approve of that. Otherwise you'd have a USB stick sticking at the panel somewhere. But it leaves a question: how do you tidily mount this? You know, most people are going to have it sort of lying around somewhere, maybe in a glove box or something. And you could do that, you could put that in a glove box. But I was looking for a neat solution, so here's what I did. I got one of these blanks that was originally mounted in the car here, and fitted a USB socket in the back of a blank. So I cut this out to a nice rectangle, and effectively that is a very short extension cable. So now that can connect to the cable that comes out the back of the car stereo, and this can all be neatly stowed away behind the dash. Now I have a USB socket here that I can fit a USB stick in that contains media to play on the stereo system. Now I can insert this USB stick into the socket there, and that's effectively connected up. You can plug your phone into this socket, but I'm not doing that because I have a wireless charger elsewhere, so I'm not interested in that. Now I should be able to navigate to the videos that are on this USB stick. But as you can see, it's very, very slow. Almost unusably so. So that worked, but it was quite fussy about the file format for the video. The USB stick was only allowed to be in FAT16 or FAT32, not exFAT or NTFS. Then everything had to be under one folder, The files themselves, the video files, had to be only MPEG 1 or 2, not MPEG 4, which is what everyone uses these days, or it'll also take DivX. So it's very limited, and then even when I complied with all those limitations, I found that it would only accept certain frame rates, and the video I just showed you was 50 frames per second initially, and if we try to play the 50 frames version of that, it breaks up badly. Let me show you. So it's stopping and starting, and it's not a happy thing at all. Just zoomed in a little so you can see the menu slightly better. There's a setting for the clock. So actually I think it's in here somewhere. Do we go that way to the clock? And you can synchronize on DAB if you have the DAB version. If you don't have the DAB version of this unit, then you can only synchronize on FM. So you would say, I could synchronize on the FM, that's to say RDS, on this version too. No, you only get either manual setting or DAB setting. So if you buy the DAB head end, you must make sure you live in a DAB reception area and you've got the DAB aerial connected. Otherwise, your clock will just drift out and it won't auto set as you would expected it to. I've written to Kenwood and told them that that sounds like a bug to me, and they've written back and said they probably won't fix it. Now you can hear it's raining and it's a bit miserable out there, and there's a reason for that. I needed it to be quite dark in order to show you this. In bright light, this display unfortunately is just nowhere near bright enough, and the reflections off this cover, which is the resistive touch sensor screen, are so strong that you really wouldn't be able to see what I'm doing here. And you can see quite a lot of reflections even now. So I'm afraid the screen isn't as good as I'd hoped, and it's a bit dark. There is no sat-nav option on this one. There are on some of the others. You can plug a sat-nav unit into the back using its own special connector, and I believe it's Garmin makes the sat-nav add-on, but it's so expensive it costs more than this entire stereo, so that's a non-starter. You can configure the items you have here. So I've chosen FM radio, Bluetooth audio, which I'm not using yet, DAB, USB, the actual CD or DVD. It's got a CD in a minute, but it will take DVD. CD also, I should say, does support CD text. I approve of that. I use Bluetooth audio on my other car, but I don't need it here because it's got its own proper Spotify app built in. So that removes the need for playing the music from Bluetooth audio, because you can just navigate to what you want on Spotify here. I need to be a bit careful I don't hit content strikes here. So I'll just turn the volume down. So you can search for whatever you like here. Let me just have a look. So you can browse for things, whatever kind of music you'd like to look for. So I think that works quite well. And it'll also pick up your own playlists as well that I've created on my Spotify account. Something I've not tried yet is Android. And you can get an app. And I've just downloaded it now, a Kenwood app. But look, it says how to disconnect with display audio, sound sharing by Bluetooth connection, screen sharing by USB connection. Oh. Well, I'm not going to plug it into the USB cable every time I get in the car, so that's pointless. Uninstall. There's another app, smartphone control menu. I'm not really sure what this does for us. Right, so what you have to do is go into the installed services here and select smartphone control on, I think. Well, I'm at a loss as to what that's supposed to be doing. Doesn't seem to do anything. But despite all that, I have found that the telephone function works rather well. Let's give it a try. Hello Alex, I'm just testing the Bluetooth. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Good, thank you, bye bye.
Why?
So that worked quite well, and you've got a physical button to select here to get into the telephone system. You can only, I think, have 6 items here, but you can decide which ones you have. So one of the default ones was for some device or other, which I obviously removed. Now I had a Sony remote control stalk, which I never got around to installing, and I thought I would give that a shot because it says it will work with lots of different remote controls. So I went into a menu here and found it. I think it was under System. Steering remote control. And in here you can press various buttons on my Sony remote control and assign them. So in this case we have this rather snazzy remote control from Sony. It has various features on here, and you can assign them to whatever function you want on the screen. The one thing it does say in the instructions when you're doing this, you really do have to do it, is when you press one of these buttons, you don't just jab it, you have to press and hold, and then it will say it's recognised what that signal is, and you can then assign one of the inputs. Now I've already done these, and I don't particularly want to reprogram any of it, but I can do things like I can switch it on and off. I think there's an off, standby button. You can assign the buttons to whatever you like, but I've obviously assigned them in some sensible way to the way the ones that are already marked up on this remote control. That connects via a 3.5mm stereo jack plug. The exact wiring within that jack plug is a mystery, but it worked, so I was very impressed with that. This background here, you can customize that. There's various different ones built in, but you could also set up a nice logo with your car manufacturer on there, or a picture of your car or something. And in fact, I'm going to set one up with Celica on that later, since this is a Toyota Celica. There's an option for fitting a reversing camera. So if I put the ignition on and select reverse, it does have this slightly annoying message about check surroundings. And because it's raining so hard, there's water on my camera, so it's a little fuzzy. But that works very well indeed. You've seen that work when I selected reverse, because there's a wire from the reversing lights through to this head end telling it that there is a reverse operation. But there's also a cam button you could override it with. But when I press it, one of two things happens. Either absolutely nothing, or blue screen saying no signal. Which seems to be quite random. There we go, no signal. Because I wired the camera up also to the reversing signal, so that when it's in reverse, the camera operates. If you want this feature to work, you need to provide power to the camera that's on either all the time or all the time that the head end is on. So when you're doing your wiring, you might like to think about that. Perhaps the power wiring to your base cannon, if you have an amplified base cannon, which is at the back of the car, you could use that to also power your rear camera, so that the camera is available at any time just by pressing that button. Another interesting wire is there's a cable to the handbrake, and I've connected that up so that it will only play DVDs when the handbrake is released. I think that might also be true of videos on the USB stick. Should we try that? So it's playing a video now. If I release the handbrake, parking off, you see, so you can't play videos while you're driving. That's a good idea. Be aware also there's a menu option in the settings somewhere for power to the DAB antenna. So if you have an amplified DAB antenna of the type that I've installed in this car, then you need to make sure that power setting is on. and it's here, so it takes a bit of finding that. Antenna power on. Now, I have been a little bit critical about this unit in certain respects. The display isn't very good, it's got a lot of reflections on it, it's not bright enough, it's only got a resistive touch sensor, and the processor inside the unit is clearly too slow for the job it's been asked to do. And I've spoken to Kenwood about this, and they have actually worked on just those very things. This is a DDX series, which was originally made some time ago primarily for CD and DVD playback, and of course all these extra features have been added on later. The new series is DMX, and that's got a much faster processor, a better display, which I think has got more resolution, and is a capacitive touch sensor. And there's also a DNX range, which includes sat-nav. Those units are a lot more sophisticated, but they're a lot more expensive. This one was around £200, and the DMX machines, some of the ones I was looking at, around about 450 or so. So a fair bit more expensive. If you want the very, very best, maybe consider one of those. But for this price, you can't complain. There's a lot of stereo for your money. Well, I hope you've learned something and enjoyed watching this video about installing that new Kenwood system. The other two videos in this series, one was unboxing of that Kenwood system, and one before that was demonstrating the older Sony one with the CDN minidisc autochangers. And that's the one last thing we'll cover now. In a future video, we'll be attempting to repair this unit, which has a fault on the CD slot drive at the top there. After that, we'll get back to some things which are more usual for my channel, to do with audio and video technology in general. But there's one thing I really do need to do before we go back to too much audio and video, is work on this beautiful Fluke multimeter, for which we now have the schematics. So that's probably the next one I'll do. Please remember to like, share, and especially subscribe, and I'll do a lot more content on audio and video technology in the near future. Bye for now.